National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa has expressed concern about the rise of COVID-19 infections in schools in the Eastern Cape and the Northern Cape. They've seen an increase there of new infections. Naptosa's Executive Director Basil Manuel joins me now to talk about this. Basil, good to have you with us tonight on In Focus. If you look at the numbers, Northern Cape recording 500 new cases, a majority of those being the students and about 10% or so being teachers. The Eastern Cape, a similar situation in as far as new infections are concerned. Are we failing to enforce the protocols, the wearing of masks, the social distancing and the sanitization?
Good evening, Tobo, and thanks for having me. I think there's a variety of reasons. When you look at the Northern Cape, that is so sparsely populated, a very small number of learners, and yet so many infected, it says something is not going right. If you look at KZN and the Eastern Cape, similarly, there seems to be a breakdown, and somewhere the problem lies. Now, it's one of a number of issues. The one is the protocols. The standard operating procedure is not being followed to the letter, and it's not the fault of the schools. The schools have been given the runaround. Many schools in Durban, for example, are reporting that the SOP says contact the health department. The health department says we are overstretched, we are overburdened, we don't have people to go to go and check the school out and advise whether there should be a closure or whether it's just a class that must be closed down. Go to your district. The districts are acting differently from one place to the other. Some of that acting sometimes results in more learners falling ill. And similarly in the Eastern Cape as well. But the social distancing is a problem. We know that many schools are really trying very hard to accommodate as many pupils as possible. And unfortunately, the 1 meter cannot be maintained. And we are saying to them, at this time, the 1 meter must be maintained. Otherwise, you are going to spread this disease further. The only shining light here, Thabo, is that the learners aren't getting really seriously ill. I know it's cold comfort for the two parents in KZN who lost children, but and of course also our teachers. Whilst we've had a few deaths, it is far less than we've had before. That's the only comfort we are having. But infections are running riot in our schools.
8 schools closed in the Northern Cape by the Department of Education because of the resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Now, already in the beginning of the year, we said learners cannot afford another year of disruptions. But it looks like it might still be the case here.
Well, I think we need to accept some realities. We don't want disruptions. The Department of Education doesn't want disruptions. But of course, COVID is doing its own thing. And there's very little we can do. There are some long-term solutions that have to be worked on. We've got to work on overcrowding in our schools. It's not one that will be fixed by tomorrow. But unless there's a plan in place for the long-term solution, we are going to continue having this for the next few years to come if COVID is still with us. And yes, I know that some of these things can't be done overnight, but surely by now there must be a plan on the table. We can't continue addressing the things around the problem. We need to address the problem. So Naptosa is saying very clearly, overcrowding is a problem. Water supply is a problem. There is the regularity of supply of various PPEs, but that is actually much better than it has ever been. But of course, we also need the protocols to be slavishly followed by everybody. And let's not talk about losses, because losses are not because of the making of the school. It's because the community is showing increases, and naturally the schools will show increases in infections.
The department had previously said they will leave no effort, rather no effort should be spared in keeping the schools open. I mean, did they act as they purport to speak? I mean, have they done all in their power to ensure, for example, as you put it, that there is enough distance between learners, there is enough ventilation in the schools, there is enough water in the schools? Have they done all they possibly can at this particular point?
It would be foolhardy for me to say a blanket yes, but I can't be unfair and say no, it's completely undone or not done. But what we have seen is that the classrooms, the additional classrooms, haven't arrived. There are few places where these have arrived to alleviate the overcrowding. Winter has been hellish in many, many places, and it's been bitterly cold. And to expect little children to have the windows and things open with the best intention in the world, it is not always happening, notwithstanding the fact that we are preaching this all the time. And of course, children are huddling. And even that too is very difficult to stop. So yes, some things have been done, but no, we must have a plan to improve our schools. The infrastructure is bad, the ablutions are bad, and of course, water supply is not great still in a large number of schools, which we need to be attending to. So there are evergreens, and I've exceeded already, Thabo, that these are not easily solvable, but there must be a plan. We are saying, where is the plan? Why are we not seeing chipping away at this monolithic problem that we've been sitting with for the last 25 years? That's what we want to see.
Should schools close for the holidays? What's the position of Naptosa? This has been discussed, I know, with the HODs.
Absolutely. Thabo, for a variety of reasons. Number one, it would be foolhardy to think that people can simply just carry on beyond the normal approximately 50 days per term to 119 days. It would be cruel and inhumane. The people would burn out. And of course, what we see is that people start taking leave because they just need a break. We don't want reckless behavior like that. What we want to see is that calm reason prevails. I don't think this was thought through sufficiently when a statement was made to do away with the holidays. But there's a greater problem. It is about the mental health of our teachers, but it's also about the stress that learners are under. Even though we say learners have been missing every alternate day, that doesn't mean they're not under stress. Parents are under stress because learners are, in fact, getting infected. Here's an ideal opportunity to have an intervention, to have a break, and hopefully we then stop that rapid infection in schools. This is what we need. But schools must have a break. This is when we catch our breath to go that last mile and to push. And yes, hundreds of teachers will go and teach during the holidays, will take the matriculants through their paces. But the stress is different. There's no compulsion. There's no fixed time. You're doing it at a different pace. And so this is part of the break. So I sincerely hope that common sense and good sense has prevailed, and that we don't bump heads about this a little further. If we want to ensure that schools remain open, we must close for the holidays to ensure that they remain open in the long run.
Now, children have already lost the much-needed school time, right? And how then do we get around that, Basil? How do we make up for that time? Because if we are still going to stick to the amount of days in the timetable, clearly we are not going to catch up. And therefore, it means, by and large, we will be able to complete the curriculum for this year next year.
Thabo, we will complete the curriculum for this year. Remember that the curriculum has been reduced. Now, it depends on what people are talking about when they talk about losses. If you're talking about losses as compared to a full normal year, normal curriculum, wake up. We've got Covid-19. It's not the same in South Africa, neither is it the same in the rest of the world. So we've reduced our curriculums. What is important is that we do what we've set out to do. But there are long-term losses, and those long-term losses are not going to be solved in 4 days of punishment to teachers and learners. That's not going to even do a dent. But there are solutions. And as unions, Naptosa and the other unions have said, let's look at the end of the year. The very districts, the very department, their officials call for promotion schedules to be in weeks before the end of school, resulting in schools closing much earlier than they should. Let's stop that nonsense, and we will gain more than a week. We will gain 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That is what we must do. But the recovery is a long-term solution. It's not happening overnight. And the comparison is not between the curriculum of 1 year and the next. It is between a child, a 10-year-old this year, and a 10-year-old in another year. Will they have amassed the same developmental things in 1 year to the next. Yeah. That is what we must be counting.
One would have thought, Basil, that the department would have been putting in continuous work, particularly on that. I mean, there are various suggestions, for example, from other educators saying, for example, there's a amount of projects that need to be done that could be cut down. There's an amount of particular assessments that could be done, that could be cut down, but still achieve the learning outcomes that are required. And that would require the department and those who set up this curriculum to apply their minds continually during this time and not actually put their foot off the pedal. Do you think that has happened?
In a measure it has, because the curriculum has been trimmed. However, it's a dynamic situation, and we never foresaw that there would be an additional curtailment of attendance earlier on in this year, and of course just at the end of the holidays. We didn't even foresee that. So there are things that we didn't foresee and that the department couldn't have foreseen. Certainly as a union, we've been involved in the curriculum changes and development. But there's also a wonderful opportunity. Not only are we trimming the curriculum, but we need to be looking at what in the curriculum doesn't need to be there any longer, and how can we bring in other skills for the 21st century and in the future. This is what I hope would be happening. Unfortunately, we're not seeing much of that, but we live in eternal hope.
Basil Manuel, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight, Executive Director of Naptosa there. We continue.